speaker icon.
There we go.
How's the audio sound?
Looks good.
Okay, it's going to be crazy. I want to thank everybody for coming out, everybody in person, everybody in the internet as well. Thanks for coming out and visiting us again. This is our first live meeting back at the wonderful and gracious Severna Park Baptist Church in Severna Park, Maryland. If you haven't come out and visited us, we encourage you to check our schedule. We are here every Thursday except for the second Thursday of the month, in which we will be holding a virtual digital contest. And that is because the space just wasn't available for that time. And it's going to be crazy looking at the internet and looking at everybody's wonderful smiling faces as well. Christine, are we still doing good on audio? Okay. Again, welcome to our first in-person meeting since COVID. I'm glad to see all your smiling faces. We are recording and streaming online. The officers are kind of working on some wording to have that posted as you come in the door to make sure that you know that we are streaming. Now, we are not videoing anybody out in the group here, but if you do ask a question or you do speak up at any time, or you may come to the podium and give a presentation or whatever, you may have your likeness recorded and your audio recorded. So we just need to make sure we go with that. I don't think we have any new members. It's been so long since I've seen all you guys. A lot of old members. As I said, this is our at the banquet. This is our 65th year. I want to make sure we do as much as we can to make a membership push. This is an amazing club. We have an amazing new space, and we have amazing officers. We have our contest chair, Ron Piper, who's worked tirelessly through COVID in order to get us taken care of via digital contests. We are going back to print contests. Ron will kind of rally the troops and try to get everybody excited about prints again when he comes up and talks on how to get the most of your critiques and competitions. We also have Jackie in the audience. Jackie, thank you so much. Jackie's done an amazing job working with the crazy virtual stuff going on. And we want to encourage you, if you want to join us for free, that's great, but make sure you fill out our membership form on the website, and that way you get all the notifications that for field trips and programs and contests. And we highly encourage you to join membership, because contests and critiques are the number one way for you to improve your photography. I think everybody out there are members already. I don't need to talk to you guys. We also have Rich Stolarski and Ed Nahinke, who have done an amazing job at the field trips over the last couple years. Hopefully now with COVID kind of going that away, we'll have a lot more participation. Make sure you check out the field trips that those two have put together, because they're amazing field trips to some of the best spots, the best well-kept secrets in Maryland, for sure. We also have Mike Thomas with the newsletter, who has made some amazing newsletters and keeps getting better every month. Make sure you read those every month, because he puts some really great gems in there. We don't have with us Russ, who's also a webmaster. And of course, we have Fred with refreshments. Thank you, Fred. It's great to finally have cookies and camera talk again once again. And my name is John Milliker, and I'm the president for this club season. I also want to encourage everyone online, when you come to a meeting, and everyone here, please take a small handful of business cards that we have for the club. And anytime you meet somebody that might be into photography, tell them about us and encourage them to come. They are in a box here on the side. Let's see. And I missed the most important part. What's wrong? Oh, Rich is pointing at Christine like there's something.
You didn't introduce me, you introduced all the other officers.
Oh, yeah, I guess I have to introduce Christine. Oh, yeah, she is there. She is there on the list down there. And, of course, Christine Milliker with our programs, amazing programs. And she's also had a very tough job, because a lot of people wanted to meet in person. And I think everyone you've got so far this year upcoming wants to meet in person. They want to get out here and talk to people face to face. And of course, we are staying hybrid. As we always said, we've gained quite a few members that have either left us, left the area, or new members from outside the area that have decided to join us, and we're going to keep doing this hybrid thing. I do apologize if things are not as polished right now, but we are working on them. This is our first meeting, and so far, hopefully so good. Of course, I forgot the most important part introducing the club. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957 and exists to promote the art, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. Please visit us at www.arundelcameraclub.org. It's sad that I had to write this down. How many times did I say this over the last 2 years on the streams? Coming up, we also have some extra meetings next week. We are coming back with our traditional What I Did Over the Summer. Check out an email, I'm guessing, from Ron that will come out to encourage you to put your images online, upload them to the website, and that way we can present them next week and have you talk a little bit about that. If you are not going to join us in person, what's the best way for people to describe maybe their images that we can read what they are and where they're from? Okay.
Try to put it in an email to me or to Mike.
Perfect. Send the contest team, please, if you're not going to join us that night, send to the contest teams a short description on where that was taken and what you learned and what you like about that image. On September 8th, we have a virtual digital contest, and that is because even though this is such a great area, we do not have the stream go down. Okay. We'll give it a couple seconds to come back, but if not, we're recording this as well, and we will go back online. Okay, we're back. On the 8th, we have the virtual contest that is digital, and that is because we do not have this space on the second Thursday of the month. They have another group that comes in here, but that works out great because Ron has been doing such an amazing job with the digital contest virtually that we're experts at that. September 10th is an amazing field trip to Maryland Fleet Week. Can one of our field trip team people tell us where that's going to be and get a little bit of information about that?
Well, it's going to be at the Inner Harbor.
Come on over here, Ed.
It's going to be at the Baltimore Inner Harbor.
Baltimore Inner Harbor.
And we are going to have sail ships come in and ships come in, and you can board them. And we're going to have planes flying over. So it's going to be a wonderful time. You can't miss it.
Thank you, Ed. If that doesn't get everybody out, I don't know what will. Then on September 15th, we have our own programs chair, Christine Milliker, with an impressive program on still life photography. I've been kind of peeking at it, and it actually looks really, really, really good. Don't miss that. September 22nd, we have a print contest. And as I said, Ron's going to rally the troops to make sure you get all those printers dusted off and get some prints for that contest. And then the last meeting of the month is September 29th is Tabletop Night. We will be having it, of course, here. And we asked for some people to bring out some lighting setups, if you could, and also some interesting doodads to come photograph, like our normal tabletop nights. I think that's every...
Message me if you're bringing something, that way I know.
Please message Christine, that's programs@arundelcameraclub.org, that you're bringing something. That way we don't have too many people and we don't have too little people as well. Does anybody have any business we need to discuss before we move on? Pay your dues. When you pay your dues, you get you enter in our contests or critiques, and you win great ribbons and awards and prizes and all kinds of fun stuff. And also helps keep us going as well, maybe for another 65 years. This month is Everything is Open. I believe next month is Still Life. Is that correct? Yes. October theme is Still Life, but this for the digital contest and also the print contest is completely open. All right. Well, if there isn't any other business, I'm going to turn it over to our contest chair, Ron Piper. Ron?
I'm going to ask Mike if he'll tag team with me on this because co-author of this PowerPoint that we're going to work through. But before we get started, a couple primaries. One is, one thing I forgot to share with John, ask him to remind you today, that we had the MPA, Maryland Photography Alliance, photo contest opens up September 1st. You can start with your submissions. So hope you can remember. I'll send an email out reminder and so on how to do that. But it's we've got a ton of prizes. Steve Sattler has been working very hard to get a lot of sponsors. So that could be a pretty nice prize if you win with that. So here's what the problem is tonight is I'm looking around the room and all of us have been doing prints for a really long time, and probably all of this that we're going to go over this evening is something you all have, and you can please correct us if we're wrong on some of this, because I'm sure we will be. But for many of the folks who are watching this online in the stream via Facebook, they may see some new things, and they may not have the opportunity to ask questions. So it would be good for them to post the questions on Facebook, or to email John or me or Mike, and we will get back to you, or just call us, and we'll try to talk through that, because we'd like to have as much participation as we get back into gear with these contests. Now, good thing is that print won't be coming up toward the end of the month. We're doing just digital shortly. Up a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
All
going to be
right.
difficult. It's going to be really difficult for a while we tune this in. Everybody's
Okay.
so used to talking to the club, but we
Right.
have to talk for two different audiences. But
Okay.
I'm sure we'll be.
All right. Well, Mike and I'll share. We'll do a duet on here, and we'll hang close to it. So a couple of things, rather than pull out the junk here as we go through. John, why don't we go ahead and start through the PowerPoint? And Mike, do you want to open it up here? And why don't you come over here, and we'll just both hang near the microphone.
Sure. Next slide. Yay. All right, so we're going to talk about our monthly contests. We're going to talk about print contests. We're going to probably skip the critique stuff, because I don't think we have any critiques scheduled this year.
We may do that later on in
Yeah.
the year as people might be interested.
There's 2 scheduled, one in January, one in May.
Excellent.
And I have them on my schedule and we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Great. And then planning for contests, what you need to do for the themes, and preparing your entries and submitting your entries and all that kind of stuff. Some of us are old hat at this, but my printer hadn't been on for 2 years, so some of it might be a challenge. Why don't we go to the next slide?
Sure. Do you want to move over just a little bit? That way everybody here can definitely see the TV. Let's pull the whole thing over.
I think you just told me I have a fat head. All right. All right. So here's our theme schedule for the year. We're going to have open competitions alternating with themes. So September, November, January, and March are open. And then October, we're going to have the theme of still life. We'll talk about each of these themes in the next few slides. December, we're going to have a theme of windows and doors. February, the theme is glass. And then the theme for April is looks like a painting. None of us knew what those themes were, so we've made up definitions. We will share those with you tonight. Next slide. Do you want to talk about these
All
a
right.
little
Well,
bit?
still life is obviously the first. Still life is our October theme. So these are some examples that we threw up here, but I think everybody probably is comfortable with what a still life would look like. And before I talk about that a second, Mike mentioned that we'll be doing the digital early in the month. Later in the month is the print. Other years we've done that differently. Now, talking to a lot of photographers, sometimes they're strategic about what they put in for a digital and what they put in for a print, because if you're like me, I'll look at a picture and it's beautiful on my computer, and it's really not very nice when I go to print it out. So you're going to have to take into consideration what's going to be your very best images and which one you want to put it in for digital, and aim those toward the print perhaps, and so on. So those are considerations, particularly for the novices, to kind of factor in. So still life, we have a definition, John, on the next slide. And we blame these definitions on Mike. If you don't like it, just file your complaint with him. So, a photograph of an inanimate object or group of objects arranged as the subject for a picture can serve as an exercise in skill and creativity to show an artist's understanding of composition, his ability to depict color harmony, form, texture, and the effects of light upon the objects. When you do these kinds of images, you want to think about how your eye follows through from the one object to the next and how they all work together. It seems like it's a very simplistic thing because a lot of painters do still lives. It's really an art, and really it takes a little bit of thinking to compose these things in a way that's meaningful. So that's October. Mike?
Yeah, so a couple things on this, the still lifes that are important is this really is about arranging something and lighting it and taking a picture. It's not about seeing something on display in a museum, you know, a found object and taking a picture. You know, so it's, you know, look at, it's very easy. There's links on our newsletter, and there's links on our website to go out to Google and get examples of still life. It's one of the oldest art forms. It's easier than taking picture of people. So, all right, next slide. John. There we go. All right, so the December theme is windows and doors. And while you look at these three examples of windows and doors, let me go ahead and describe this for you. A photograph where the primary subject consists of windows and or doors. This could be a classical photograph of the door at the entry to a building, or maybe decorated for Christmas. Old doors have lots of character, like those from abandoned buildings or historical buildings. Doors can also be open or shut and provide many composition options looking through the door. Windows similarly show character and often have reflections or provide the opportunity to peek within. You know, so a lot of creativity options here with doors. Hopefully you'll explore doing more than just a straight-on shot of a door, although if it's a nice door, it might be worth it. So.
At the same time, if windows and doors are in it, it isn't that they're incidental parts of the composition. They need to be kind of more central to the viewer. And when you look at the image, you want to be kind of drawn to it. And the one in the middle is, these are pretty good examples accidentally, actually, when we pulled these up.
Closer to the mic.
The one in the middle, there are a lot of opportunities for looking through windows, looking through doorways to other parts of the composition. They're hard to do because oftentimes the interior is going to be not as well lit as the outside, and you're going to have to use HDR, or you're going to have to work very hard if you don't have a high dynamic range in your camera to get the two parts of the image to put together and make it balanced.
Yeah, and I would say you just have to use your judgment. Like if you have a person who's framed by the door, you know, is the subject the door or the person? There's nothing saying you can't have people in the picture, but just you know, the subject, the focus of this contest is doors and windows. So the people should be ancillary, complementary, things like that. All right, why don't we go to the next one? So the February theme, well, I've already read this, so we'll just go ahead and skip over that, or maybe I shouldn't do that for the online audience. Anyway, here are some examples for the February theme of glass. These are three excellent examples. I wish I took any one of those, but I think there's a lot more options out there. So this is something you can get out and do walking through town, walking through a city. It's something you can do in your basement. You know, there's lots of opportunity here. There's no excuse not to have glass photos. Why don't we move over to the definition, to the next slide? Are you actually changing that with your tongue? Or you're eating a chocolate bar? Never mind. All right. Did you want to read the definition, or you want me to read it?
No, go ahead.
All right. So a photograph where the primary subject is made of glass. Photographing glass can be challenging due to glare from unwanted or uncontrolled highlights. Techniques like dark field lighting and light field lighting can give definition to the rims and edges of the glass. Another interesting property of glass is refraction. You know, if you've ever looked through like a glass ball, everything's upside down, or if you've ever looked through glasses that have water in them, you'll see distortions. That's part of the refraction. Many commercial photographs are of glass like wine, beer, perfume bottles. You can even try to photograph shattering or broken glass. Just be careful and not get cut.
What specifically is meant by dark field lighting and light field lighting?
So in a dark field lighting, the glass itself is very light, but because you've used some like dark edges to your, well, not background, but edges, so that when you light it, it gives a dark edge to the light glass. So otherwise you wouldn't get to see the edges. You got to do something to make it show up. And then light field's the exact opposite. You give it it's a dark picture of a glass, but yet you put some white reflectors.
How do you do that?
Well, that's why you need to come to our tabletop night, so we can actually show people how to do that.
We do have a speaker coming in to talk about glass as one of our presentations. Actually, Bob is giving us a talk. So
Perfect.
Just a term that was unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I found this summer when doing a little photography and walking down storefronts and things like that, it's really hard to just do incidental photography like that and get a good photograph of glass, of windows, of their objects. It really seems like it begs for a studio setting in order for you to get exactly the right lighting. It can be just a nothing picture, or you can really take time and plan it out. So I think that I'm glad this is coming up in February and not at the beginning of the year. It gives us plenty of time to get a speaker in and get some practice.
I know it's dependent on the judge, but would reflections be viewed as a positive or negative contribution to a photograph of glass?
Maybe.
I think that's going to depend on the image.
Yeah.
I want to repeat that question. Rich asked if the reflections would be positive or negative, and Mike had answered maybe. We have a question from Facebook from Debbie Wolf. How many digitals can we submit? Is it 3 like last year?
It is. And
Yes.
We'll go through in detail for both the digitals and we'll go through in detail in a bit what you submit for the digitals and the prints and so on for each of the contests.
Why don't you just stay right there?
All right. Sorry. I don't like being too close to you, so we'll see.
I understand. All right, next slide. All right, our theme for April is looks like a painting. I had no idea. I wasn't here the night y'all voted on the themes. I have no idea what that means. So here's our made-up definition. So Ron picked up some images on the internet to give you an idea of what this might be like.
With caution, but we'll talk about that in
Yeah.
a second.
Let's go to the next slide. So here's our definition. These definitions are also in the newsletter. They're also on the website. So a photograph that appears to be a painting. This effect could be achieved in camera or through post-processing techniques. We've all seen photographs that when first viewed appeared to be a painting. And then closer observers, you look at it a little more and you realize, no, that's a photograph. This can be accomplished through composition, costume selection, poses, colors. That you can actually take one of these pictures in camera. Maybe the way maybe if you take it at one of the events that John takes, photos at, where everyone's already in costume or something. Another option is that you can, I think it requires less creativity, but you may disagree, is to use filters in your post-processing software. There are paint filters in Topaz, there are paint filters in Photoshop. You can get a lot of paint filters things. So you can apply these effects to your images to create a painterly looking image, and that is fair game. It just matters whether the judge likes the output.
Well, that was my thing. John, could you scroll back to the pictures? I want to talk to those a second. There are plenty of judges out there who are going to look at either one of these and throw them out because there is so much work with these filters, these different tools that you and I all know, Photoshop related. They're not necessarily going to be creating a lot of love from some of the judges. What they're really going to be looking for is a photograph and not a quasi-painting. I'm guessing. So if you want to go with filters, I would caution you to be very thoughtful about how you use that. And in the past, over the last 10 years or 15 years, I've been kind of playing with painterly looks. Probably those that are extremely crisp and sharp. There are types of paintings that almost look like they're photographs. They kind of flip it the other way. I would almost think just be very thoughtful about the composition, not just the look, but the composition of it and the colors and the toning. And this might work for the judge, but I can't guarantee you that. So we have plenty of time to be maybe discussing this on and off during the year until we get to April.
Yeah, well, and we are going to educate the judges beforehand.
This one I actually played with when it was announced, just out of curiosity. Tried it on, various things, and it is really open. You can go almost any direction. There's going to be a huge, wide variety. So it's going to be very, very guessing the judge dependent.
Yep.
But it was kind of fun to play with them and see what you got.
Right.
And I'm not sure I really liked any of them. But
All right.
So what do we have next?
So this is where we start talking about the monthly digital contest. You want to
Okay.
take this?
Yeah. So as John said, the digital contests are going to be as they were last year. A couple of things here that are going to be important to note. Now, these are the dates, so they'll be early in the month. And then you think about, I do a little planning book, and I'll talk about that in a bit, where I go through each month and try to figure out 9 images that might work. And some are those 9 images I'm going to have to, 3 will be digital and the 6 black and white and color, the prints. So when you think of the mix and think of your planning, I know many of you are doing that, just remember the digital comes first. The digital will be online. The judge this year is going to see images that are 2048 instead of 1024 if you turn them in. Now that's the one biggest change over last year. We did a little bit of testing, and Mike discovered that we can improve the quality of the images that the judges work with if we simply step them up to 2048 pixels on the longest side. You can do that out of Lightroom. There's a place to set the number of pixels. You can check it, and then you can send it on. But it should improve some of the issues that people have had that maybe there was not the clarity, they couldn't get the clarity out of 1024 that they could. So keep that in mind. That's a file size. If you have any questions on how to get to 2048, Mike is really good at this. Some of the rest of us can kind of wing our way through it too. Now on the digital, remember there are no separate categories, black and white or mono versus color. You have 3 images. They can be color or mono. So you go through your images and see what's going to work for you. We're going to use the website portal that we used last year, and I guess the accounts pretty much stay the same. You don't have to generate new ones, Mike?
So
pass.
if you participated in the digital contest last year, your account is still up, still active, same email ID, whatever you used, and password. I would suggest that you try it and make sure you remember the password so that if not, we can reset that for you.
Okay. Now, as far as what can you submit, let's go through these here because one of these is a little confusing. Color and mono digital photos that you never submitted, that's easy. Go into your files. If you've never brought it into a contest anytime, then that's fine. Secondly, color and mono digital images that won honorable mention, lifetime, honorable mention no more than 2 times in the past. They hit honorable mention 3 times, they're no longer eligible. And somebody does keep track of this a little bit better than some of the rest of us, but Mike has picked up on a few. In fact, I won on something last year, and I realized I had submitted it too many times before, and we had to pull it, and I lost my ribbon on that one too. So thanks, Mike. Color and mono digital photos that never won before and were submitted no more than 2 times in the past. So if you got a first, second, third, or fourth, no more than 2 times, okay, then you're okay. If you go to a third time, you can't submit them, right? Got it the other way around?
Once you've won first through
Right.
Once you've won first through fourth, you cannot resubmit an image.
That's
But you can only submit a image so many times that loses, and then we don't want to see it anymore.
right.
How old can the photos be? I mean, is there a?
Can you repeat the question, Ron?
This is related to how the images that have won in the past can't be resubmitted.
Right.
Okay, and now. Okay, the question is, how old can the images be? And the answer, Mike, is what?
I don't think we have a rule that specifies, so that's up to you. Or maybe I'm confused, that maybe we do and I don't remember, but I don't think we have a rule. But what's the learning experience if you go dig back 40 years for a picture? So I always use pictures from the last year or two most of the time. We don't have an official rule on that. Fred?
Yeah, if you have a colored image, it loses 3 times. Can you turn it to a black and white and submit it again?
I think technically, yes. Can you repeat the question? Yeah, so if you have a color image and it loses 3 times, can you convert it to a black and white and submit it in the monochrome contest? I believe technically the answer is yes. I'd have to go look through the rules to see for sure.
I think that was what we had done before. As long as that image is processed or it's something different enough to make it a new image, it's kind of been a gray area, but it's been allowed. We have a question from Doug Wood in the chat. Doug is asking, what I did last summer, is that 2048? And do we use the competition portal for that submission?
So yes, the image size will be 2048. This is where we get to test the upsize. And no, there'll be a separate link for critiques that I think was in the email you sent out last week, but we'll send out another one before next week so that everyone can use that. But there's a separate critique link that we use to keep these separate from the contest.
And Anthony Cusato in the chat says he likes your shirt.
Rich?
This is very specific, and it relates to Fred's question. Colored monodigital image is never submitted before, but you submit the digital image, it fails 3 times. Can it be turned to a print and submitted to the print? Or are you going to cover that when you do talk about print images?
So that's basically the same question that Fred
the
answered,
question
and I think technically you can do that.
You could submit digital and then you could resubmit it as a print?
So here's the question: are you going to resubmit it as a color? I mean, is it color? What did you do to the image that's different when you submit it as a print?
I printed it.
Yeah, so it's the same image, right? Yeah. So
Your rules aren't
I know.
saying that, so maybe you'll cover it when you get to the prints.
Yeah, probably not. But Fred.
We can talk about it.
You would still accept a 1024, correct?
Yes, we will still accept a 1024. For all I care, you can submit a 32 by 32, but you will not compete well against the other images that are higher resolution. So your image might even display smaller on the screen depending on how we run the contest. So you'd want to fill up the screen. All right.
Let me also get back to your question about the old files, whether they are good or not. My experience over the years has been personally my older files. It was a different camera and there was a different resolution and lenses and so on and so forth. And not that I'm doing great now, but the images are very different and the competitiveness is at a higher level of resolution and so on. The dynamic range for cameras are better. So the older photographs don't always compete as well as they could with the newer ones, although some of them are much more artful, if you want to put it that way. This last question is very, very specific. Any digital photos that were submitted in 2021 for the mono digital contest, regardless if they won or not. Remember, there at the end of the year in 2019, I believe it was, I'm sorry, in 2021 year only, Lewis and I had talked. Lewis, you were doing contests, and we, several folks, and we did digital mono and color as two separate categories. So we don't have, digital is digital now. So they're eligible. Yep, but you have to be careful, okay, about resubmissions for those. All right, Mike, you want to say any more about that one?
Sure. So I went to our webpage, and you can look up the rules yourself. But we defined images in terms of two elements, their composition and their treatment. And we have a specific example in here where should either the composition or the treatment change greatly, the resulting photograph shall be deemed to be a different image. For example, if a negative is printed conventionally and also printed as a solarization, those are two different images, even though it was the same negative. So I think that sort of addresses some of the questions about, is it the same image or not? Can I convert it to black and white or something like that and re-enter it?
I've got a question in chat from Clarence Carvel. Can you clarify, is it 3 images total or 3 each of monochrome and color?
For digital, it's 3 images total. For print, it's 3 color images, 3 color prints, and 3 monochrome prints.
Any questions on this before we move to the next one? Okay, this will be just like things were a few years ago as digital goes, but we're going to be doing it online. So that's, other than that, that's the only difference. Okay, John, what do we have next? Okay, the monthly print contest. I want to talk a little bit about prints, particularly for a lot of folks who are not here. All of you have done prints who are in the room. So this would be repetitious, so don't go to sleep on me when we talk about that. Print contest is going to be late in the month from the 22nd of September all the way through till April. There are novice contests and there are unlimited contests. And under novice, there are novice monochrome prints and novice color prints. For unlimiteds, there are monochrome 3 and color 3. So we actually have 4 contests the night that we have prints, okay? And that will be in person. The only way I think we can operate that will be in person. I know some other clubs have tried to do that. Now, we use the word monochrome here because in some cases, Mike, you want to talk about that? There are some alternatives to regular black and white.
Yeah, so the definition's a little broader than just black and white, but if you're doing just black and white, you definitely are in the definition of monochrome. But monochrome also covers basically an image consisting of basically one tone, even if that tone isn't black and white. So what's your favorite type of photo? Cyanotypes. So what color is cyanotypes? Blue, but they're still monochrome. So there are other styles, there are other ways to do monochrome images. So sometimes people get thrown off when a color image appears, even though it's a monochromatic color image. So that's a little bit different than a lot of clubs that do just black and white.
Okay. Pardon me? Sepia is monochrome, yes. Okay, so eligible photos list looks a lot like in the past. Color and mono digital photos never submitted before.
You need to change those words. Color and mono, digital or print photos never submitted.
We cut and pasted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You need to exclude
Digital and print.
print never, or include prints never submitted before.
Right,
Sure.
right. You're correct.
That answers my previous question.
Color and mono digital photos that won honorable mention no more than 2 times in the past. Color and mono digital photos that never won before and were submitted no more than 2 times in the past.
I think the point is the digital's probably shouldn't be.
Digital.
They should be prints.
Color and
Right.
mono photos never submitted
Okay.
before.
It looked all correct the other night. Mike, what happened? And lastly, the any digital photo submitted in 2021 for the mono digital contest, regardless if they won or not. Okay, you're back in. So, okay, any quick, Bob?
Digital formats, are you allowed just JPEG or PNG or TIFF?
JPEG?
Just JPEG.
Just JPEG.
Can you repeat
Good
the
question. Okay, what format should the photos be in? They should always be in JPEG.
JPG or JPEG?
JPG format, thank you. Yeah.
Which is totally irrelevant on the print slide we're on right now.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right, so before you see any more mistakes we have up here, let's move on to the next slide, I guess. All right, and annual and lifetime points. Mike puts the slideshow together for the last program of the year. You'll see some awards based on how many points you've accumulated during the time. So on your photos, first place winners, 8 points, 6 for second, 4 for third, 2 for fourth place, and honorable mentions, 1 point. Any losing or honorable mention image can be resubmitted up to 2 more times. We've kind of gone over that. Points from any monthly contest image wins contribute to the end of year points award competitions and your lifetime total of points. So other than my stumbling way of reading that, are there any questions? Fred?
The second line here, explain that again. Any law.
All right, Mike, you want to take a shot at that?
Can you repeat that question as well?
Fred asked, the second bullet up here, can we repeat that or explain that? So any losing or honorable mention image can be resubmitted up to 2 more times. Basically, you can only enter an image 3 times if you don't get first through fourth, unless you change it to another format and enter it in a different contest.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Basically, you can enter it 3 times, not 2 times.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, the yearly points are what decide the photographer of the year, the monochrome, the color, the digital photographers of the year, whether you're novice photographer of the year or unlimited photographer of the year. And then your points, your lifetime points go to working your way to go from novice to unlimited, which is 50 points. But then every 50 points after that, you can get a certificate. There's silver, bronze, gold, platinum, and master certificates that you get after you earn more and more points. So that's what the points are used for, is the end of year results, trophies, and for the lifetime. Yes, Fred?
One more question. It could possibly win honorable mention 3 times, correct?
Yes. An image could possibly, he can't let go of this. The image could possibly win honorable mention 3 times. The answer is yes.
All right. John, any other questions?
No, I was just going to say one way basically you can submit an image 3 times and it's dead. Unless it gets first through fourth,
Right.
then it's dead.
Right.
But honorable mention does not
Right.
do that. Honorable mention is not winning, basically. You get a point, though, for sure.
I think the logical part of this, too, is if you've taken it out in front of 2 different judges, 2 different contests, same image, and you get some similar feedback, then maybe there's a story there about that image and its ability to compete. Now, that isn't always the case. I've had 2 losses, and on the third one, it might win, second, third place or something. But I'm saying that for the novices or the folks who haven't competed before. Bringing them back is a good thing because you look at the image, look at the feedback you got, go back and tweak it. Maybe the next time you bring it back, it looks a little different. It's still the same image. Mike?
So you already covered the next slide. Go ahead. Bring up the next slide. You did it you gave it the voiceover on a previous slide. All right, so basically, there's going to be 2 contests on digital nights, novice and unlimited. There's going to be 4 contests on print night. There'll be novice and unlimited, monochrome and color contest. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, this one's you, because you brought
Okay.
some samples.
Well, I brought some stuff along to kind of talk this through. So the issue is, particularly for the folks who have not competed with prints before, and so it's been 2-3 years. Well, this is our most exciting piece of it. It starts off with a piece of, now I use foam board, and you as a photographer can decide to use regular matte board instead. But the standard size of this, always good to have a ruler with you, 16 by 20 is the standard size for going through the print, the light box for the print. We don't accept them any bigger than this. Except,
Well, technically the rule is 20 inches on the long side. So you
Right.
could actually have a 20 by 20
That's true.
image if you
Right.
got your own map.
right, but 20 on the long side. So I would suggest using foam board if you can get it, and use a razor knife, cut these, and you could set a few back. Now, there's a little bit of a thinking about that. If you want to do this easily, go down to Michael's, get some foam board, cut your backboard, and buy some mats. They got black ones, they got white ones, they got green ones, red ones, yellow, and everything like that. Do not buy any yellow ones, green ones, blue ones, or any of those. I've gotten hammered by judges in the past who want black or white, okay? It's just a thing to do.
Now, that's just a tip. That's not a rule.
That's not a rule, that's a tip. Thank you, Mike. But it happens that these are (16 by 20). So this works pretty well for 11 by 14 photograph. So and that's perfectly within bounds for contest. Now there's a thing about this, and I'll show you a couple here. That works perfectly. If you have a 16 by 11 by 14 image, and you've sized it this way, that works just fine. You go get the mat, go get the board, and you decide whether you want to have a black mat on it or a white mat. Decide whether you want to have a black mat on it or a white mat, and that's your decision. However, I'm finding over the years that a lot of times that's not necessarily the best sizing, because composition should drive you to make the print size accordingly. This one's a square crop, and I had the foam board on the back, and it fits perfectly within here. I had to hand cut that, or you can take it up to Michael's and ask them to cut it for you. Pretty much, there are tools such as this that have a track on it for cutting your mats, if you want to do that. But if you're going to shoot all 11 by 14 format, Michael's and stores like that are probably your best bet. And Mike, you buy some things online like that too, right?
Yeah, so I buy my mats at matcutter.com. There's probably several other places. I tend to use standard sizes and shapes, so that limits me a little bit on my composition, because sometimes I'm making the picture fit the hole versus the hole fit the picture.
There's several online sites that I've found that you can buy them in reasonable bulk, and they come with board, frame, and plastic to put them in. And I don't know, $2-3 per.
Right.
If you order 10 or 20 or something like that, and all the standard sizes. And I don't remember what they are now because it's been so long, and I still have a few at home left over.
What Rich had said, for anybody online, that there are a lot of places online that you can get them in bulk.
this is a reason you don't necessarily want to go with the standard mat. This part of the flower here comes over to close to the edge there and close to the edge here. I was a little sloppy in mounting this, and you see a little bit of a white sliver beyond the image showing here. Judges are not going to like that, and a little bit of that over here. You'd like to have plenty of breathing space around the central subject on something like that. This one somehow ended up with a third place in a competition in 2013, so it got through, but it's better to try to be real thoughtful about how you lay it out in there and really allowing your image to drive the size of the print is important. You print a little smaller. And here's the other issue is you notice the size of the space of the mat. This one's about 3 inches or so. This is about 2 perhaps. And sometimes in all of these it's a little bit larger. It really allows you, if you have a little bit larger mat, the ability of the judge to really take time and look at it and take it in. So trying to go cheap and keep your mat's border really small doesn't really work all the time, but sometimes you're going to know this as an artist. You'll look at it and it's going to work for you.
I have a question online. Debbie Wolf asks, do they have to be matted, or can you frame with photo paper, or just apply a foam board? What she's talking about is, can she kind of use Photoshop to make it look like a mat?
Mike, why don't you answer that?
So we do require it to be matted, but some of our photographers will just get a dark black foam board, and then they will carefully attach their print in the center of that board. It's cheaper than having the full mat and everything. So if you want to put a digital frame around your image and attach it to a board, I don't see why you couldn't.
You know, when I first started, I remember doing exactly that. I had some of those photo corners, and then I put some packing tape on the foam core, and then I used like little loops of gaffer's tape to do all 4 corners, and I did well there. Another question, I don't know if we still have this rule or not, but we used to have a rule that the judge was supposed to judge the image on the image itself and not on the mounting options. Is that still a rule for us?
And so
it doesn't mean it's always going to happen.
I'm not sure it's ever been a rule. It is a strongly contested discussion within the club. We're a photography club, and so you would like your image to be what's judged. But often judges will look at the image and they'll look at the mat and go, well, that's not a very professional looking mat, and that whether they say it or not, it might affect their opinion. It's the same with the whether you have a white or a black mat or a colored mat. A lot of judges only like white mats. I only know one judge that likes black mats, and if you're going to choose a colored mat, it really needs to complement the image. And I have seen people do that. The other challenge here is these mats get handled a lot as we're passing them through the image box, and we're doing the judging and we're sorting them and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes the mats get a little damaged in process, even though we try not to, and we'd really hate the judge to hold that against the photographer. It's hard to control whether the judge will count that or not. Yeah, that's a challenge.
It seems like most of the judges, at least in the back of their mind, are looking at the presentation of it. So they wanted, I think the way Mike put it is good, they want to know that you took a great deal of care of putting it together. John, the only concern that I could see in terms of the fact that these mats and photographs are handled a lot, if it's just pasted to the front of a piece of board, going back to Debbie's question, it's fine, but you took a great deal of care on those corners to make sure that it's not going to come loose. And that also means that picture permanently belongs on that board.
Not necessarily. That's why I said if you put packing tape down first, that kind of gives you a little bit of an area where you can put a loop of Scotch tape or even gaffer's tape. But and like you said, you brought up a great point, which is our print handlers, they put on cotton gloves and they pass them through as easily and as nicely as possible. But you do have people, before COVID hit, we used to have stacks of images and people would, kind of shuffle their images like a deck of cards. So, stuff happens. So if you do it that way, make sure you secure it down really well.
Right.
That reminds me, I haven't seen the gloves in 3 years, so I don't know where they are.
I've got plenty in my dark room. I will bring
Excellent.
some in.
Okay.
Excellent. And then, things happen, and I had a footprint on one of mine once. So.
We have a question from Doug Wood in the chat. Can it be full-sized with no mat?
As long as it's affixed to something like a foam core or something like that, you could go have it professionally printed, full size on a 16 by 20 piece of cardboard or whatever hard backing the company provides, and that's fine. As long as the main reason we have a limitation is it has to fit in our light box when we're passing it through.
And really, you want a mat. You want a mat to make a clean area around your image. If you're not, then that image is going to be subject to whatever color the light box is now. I haven't seen the light box in a couple of years, but your image is subject to the actual light box part. So it may or may not work for you.
A couple things about putting these together. John, I don't know if that might be in a next subsequent slide here, perhaps. In terms of matting, one of the other good reasons for matting the pictures is that it can save you money and time later on. So many of the mats that I have, pictures that I have back in my collection, the ones that have won in the past, I'll put the label on the back, and the label, on the label you have to have your name, the name of the image, the category, color, print, unlimited, and the date. And then if it wins, we'll put a notation on it when it goes through the contest. So that's here, always good, particularly if there's question about the subject, to put an arrow at the top so you know where the top of the image is. So that all is fine, that goes together, but the issue is, next month, do you want to go out and buy 6 more mats and set them up? Over time, you can reuse these mats, and part of it has to do with using Scotch tape or linen tape. And the other thing that I use quite often, Mike will talk about his system, which I really like, but I've never been able to do it right with linen tape and the hinges. But they sell glue dots at Michael's and all these craft stores, and they stick really well. Don't use the ones that stick just one time, or use the ones that are permanent, and then use an X-Acto knife to cut them loose when you're through the contest. It lost. You want to go back and put a new image and reuse the mat. You can absolutely do that if you're very careful. And as a part of that, when you print the image, don't print it just out to the edge of the mat. The paper that it's printed on ought to at least go out here about a ½ inch or an inch or more, so you make sure it stays behind there. And last tip on that, use hinges. You can either use linen tape or you can use I use Scotch tape, and I tape it here and here, put 2 pieces there, and it always hangs nice, neat, and straight. If you end up taping it at the top and the bottom, weather change, a little humidity change, and the thing will buckle, and it won't look good now in the image or in competition. Mike?
Yeah, make sure you put your arrow, because I've seen it where, okay, does it go this way? Does it go this way? So it's kind of the selection of the people that are passing it through. One thing I liked is you can get some of those stickies that are for business cards, and I like putting all my information there and then sliding it in, and then that way when you take an image out of the mat, you can keep that, what it won, if it won anything, and you can keep it in your files.
Yeah. The thing you've got to remember is the people running the contest are passing dozens of images back and forth, and they really have just a couple of seconds to look at an image and decide which way it goes in the box. So that arrow is important, especially when you get something like abstract images or something like that.
I think you have to remember that that pre-cut map with an 11 by 14 opening is actually 10 and a half by 13 and a half.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so I print 11 by 14 with half-inch or slightly less white around the edge, so that when it goes down, the mat goes over it, and you don't get the little white edges on it, or you're not cropping it. If you print 11 by 14 and put one of those on it, you'll crop a half-inch off, quarter-inch on each side.
Yeah, so Rich, basically what Rich is saying is these aren't actually 11 by 14 holes. They're slightly smaller than that. So when you print on 11 by 14 paper, there is that overlap that.
Half-inch, 8 by 10,
Yeah.
or 7 and a half by 9 and a half, etc.
Bob,
Please print the labels. Handwriting is very difficult, particularly in the half dark, which is where they're read.
so
In early days, I used to use a little 12-point font on that, and I have one here. Make it nice and big. We're all getting old. We need to have as
Go ahead,
large a
next
print
slide.
as we can so we can see it.
next slide. There's labels. Yeah, so, yeah, it's nicer, it's much nicer to the people running the contest if you actually, type up your labels on a computer and print them that way. Handwritten, write neat and big if you're going to do handwritten, because, sometimes it's hard to read. Jackie?
Make sure your mat is fastened to the backboard.
Yes.
They come apart.
Yeah, and that's what Ron was referring to on the way I treat my mats. I actually take both my mats and I put the tape right down the middle, hinging the two like a book. And then I mount the picture to the backboard and I fold over and I use dots to seal the front to the back. And then when I decide to reuse that mat, I basically just gently pull it apart, and then I can take the picture out and I can put another picture in and reuse the mat. Now here's a trick that's in our rules that y'all should know. If you win, if one of your prints wins, when you enter it into the end of year contest, it needs to be in the same mat. You cannot have taken it out of the mat. You cannot have rematted it. It's got
reprint
to
it.
be the same image that you originally entered and won with.
And you can't reprint it.
And you can't reprint it. That's why we put a note on the back of the image on the label saying you got first, second, or whatever. But yeah, if you reprint it, it's not the same image. You might not, your color might be off, your ink might be running low, and when you mat it, you might not mat it exactly the same way because remember, you got a little overlap here. So we do require that it's the same image. So I get to reuse my mats, but only from one year to the next, not from contest to contest.
If I win, it's not, I'm not reusing that mat.
All right, Rich doesn't reuse the mat if he wins.
One caution on the tape hinges that Mike has talked about. If you just use a Scotch tape, it sticks pretty well, but it doesn't because over time it sort of comes apart. And you use linen tape.
I use Japanese hinge tape. It's standard.
Okay. Okay, that's even better. But if you're not careful, if your tape isn't very good, then it starts to pull apart at the top.
Jackie mentioned that she uses just vinyl packing tape, and I do the same thing. But wherever I attach, even my glue dots, I put the packing tape on the mat, on the back of the mat, and on the board, and I could pry those suckers apart. And it's kind of like you're not going to pull the cardboard back.
Mats are expensive. You want to reuse them.
That's right.
So we're just about done with the printing and matting part, about to move over to your planning stuff. Is there any more questions on printing and matting and stuff for contest? All right, well, then let's go over to the
Okay, thanks.
planning.
Okay, this is a little bit of what some of us do, and this is some advice. It's not a you have to. What you want to do if you want to participate in the contest, bring your images in, digital, whatever, and that's fine. It's good to have some either online on your computer or on paper, but to have some planning document that you're going to use to pay attention to what you're submitting for a couple of reasons. One is if you've submitted with it and won, you want to record that. and 3 years later, you don't want to try to resubmit it because you had forgotten you had submitted. You know, you want to keep good records of what you've done. So there are a number of things to do. You get a work calendar, think ahead of time. I know many of us have already done this summer. I'm doing this particularly for the novices who haven't really thought through, particularly with 9 images a month. That's a lot to manage in one category. So start going through your images, create a planning document so you can kind of just either drop little thumbnails, pictures of the photos you'd like to submit into a grid or something, so you can just track that out, and then you look at them all together, and then you start moving the pictures around and so on. But you need to plan ahead of time and make sure that you're not resubmitting something inappropriately that you did not want to do. John, we have another slide here. Okay, this is actually a document like I use. It's just a table out of Word. And I'll do a thumbnail of the images, drop them in here. Then I have the name of the image, and then the category I've submitted it in, and so on and so forth, and the month. So that does help stay ahead. But you can do a lot of the same stuff on your computer. You don't necessarily have to do that the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. Okay, so getting these images ready for the judges. It seems like I get really good during the year if I have to submit for the judges for competition, and I'm looking at dirt that I want to get out of there, and hot spots I want to clean up, and all this. But then over the summer, I'm not competing, and I end up forgetting all of that. And I put a picture aside, and I really like it, and then the night before the competition, I'm getting ready to print it, and it looks awful, because you're finally, with the judges, are leading you to start paying much more attention to your images. So I would suggest start early on trying to clean those up. Remove the dirt, remove the distractions, process it appropriately. Many of the judges are not real excited about over-processed stuff anymore. We went through an HDR phase a few years ago, and that's no longer playing very well with judges. And many of our cameras today are doing a really good job and dealing with dynamic range in a good and easy way without having some of the effects that you got from HDR. This is kind of an important piece, this bullet down here. I'd like to jump down to that. If you didn't shoot it, you can't use it in your picture. So the sky replacement tools and Luminar and other things, they are wonderful. But the sky that you replace a bad sky with better be something you shot. So many of us have folders of skies that we've shot that we really like. Put them over there. Use those and bring them in. If you want to use Luminar or whatever else, that's fine. But keep in mind, it needs to be your sky. Same way with many of these textures. Many of us will go out and look for textured surfaces and rocks and dirt and cloth and so on. And we photograph those and we drop them in as texture layers. And if you want to do that, that's great, but it should be your texture. Don't buy something online and then go try to submit that as your own work. If you have any other part of an image, a piece of the content that you have borrowed from another photograph, it can be your photograph. You want to move a silo in to the photograph. It can be if it's your silo, that's fine, but don't bring in somebody else's. Now, I may be overemphasizing that, but there are some contests that are operated when people are allowing people to be completely free with the creativity. And along that line, I think there are an awful lot of tools that allow you to get, as I said earlier, this painterly look. And some of those, the judges are not always in love with that. They look at it, they want to know that you were able to put together a good image. They don't want to know that the machine was able to do that instead. Okay, last item here is, I'm going to go this back to digital. This 2048 we're doing this year for the file size is going to be very, very important in order to be competitive, because that means the images are going to look sharper for the judges. In the past years, we had feedback from judges, well, I can't quite tell how good the image is because it was a 1024. In some cases, we had some that were less than that.
You can hide a lot of sin in a 1024 image. But like Ron said before, in order to compete, it's kind of like putting a 11 by 14 print up against a 5 by 7. You're going to want to make sure that you go to these 2048s and reach out to the contest team if you have a problem doing that. But please, make sure you up that.
Well, John, how close are we to coming to the end here? Well, this is just sort of from experience, particularly for novices. You can look at a picture and fall in love with a picture and think that this is the best thing since sliced cheese. And then you take it into a judge, and the judge is going to really give you some bad feedback. And you're not going to like the result. It's always good if you can be brave enough to take your picture and get it in front of get it in front of yourself multiple times, and B, get it in front of somebody else that whose ideas you trust. Now, a few thoughts on that. I've got on my phone, I've got my website, and then most of the stuff you look at on my website, they're images that I processed one time, and I really haven't gone back to work on them, and I look at them when I'm sitting and waiting for a doctor's appointment or something, and I look through them, and then on my phone, and then I start to think, well, this really isn't a good picture, or this is what I need to do with it. So look at your own images that way. But the other thing I'll take my images and get them in front of a couple friends I have, and ask them to look at them and just give me feedback, because there are so many times that you look at an image and you just don't see it because you fall in love with a piece of the picture and you forget to see the rest. You're just blind to the arrows, and we all do that. So taking it and sharing it with other people and getting feedback. I took some pictures I really liked the other day, went out to shoot something with Fred, and Fred went through and he said, you got a hot spot over there, look over there, this is out of focus, you need to get rid of this over here, and so on and so forth. And it was the best advice I'd gotten on some of those, because I had been looking at them, some of these images all by myself, and I didn't see the flaw. So I would just advise you to look and ask and share with other people. If you're the only one that looked at the image, there's something there that you missed most likely, and it's going to come back to haunt you. This is something else I want to throw out. This third dot. We've had so many presenters come in and talk about the rule of thirds, talk about leading lines, and we've had a number of judges come in and said, and every image they commented about the leading lines. Not that that was a theme, but the leading lines. Well, this doesn't lead anywhere or whatever. You've got to pay attention to those things, but in the end, it's your picture. So you have to look at it and think about what moves me. And if it doesn't move you at all, then don't submit it. But leading lines, it's good advice, and it's a rule, but it isn't. There are plenty of photographs that don't use leading lines in the same way. So that's fine. The rule of thirds, the same. So all of those advice you hear from the judges, absolutely listen to it. It's a good point of view, but those rules are advice, not necessarily the final word. John, we have one more?
A slight counterpoint. I've submitted black and white prints that they were just fillers because, I didn't have enough, and judges have loved them.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, it was nice enough that I submitted it, but I had a favor it, and the judge didn't like it at all. And I had one that I thought was okay, and somehow the judge liked it. And then I look back on it, and they started to try to understand what I missed.
What Rich just said in the audience was a lot of times he puts in a couple images and throws a couple fillers in there. And I've noticed this as well, where the one that you're like, oh, that one's definitely going to win. That's like the first one out or something. And then the fillers, you just wanted to be able to participate. They usually do a lot better. It's crazy.
Judges have their opinions, and you don't always see what they see.
What Rich said, with judges always have their opinions. You don't always see what they see, and that's true. That's why we have the 3 and out rule. You're gonna hit 3 different judges, and you're gonna get 3 different feedbacks.
Well, a couple of things on here that are worth going back and hitting. Tool marks. You know, you've used a brush or something, and you ended up inadvertently dropping a little dot there or a little blur or something. Be real mindful of how you use those things in Lightroom. They can be in Photoshop. They're wonderful, but they can create a problem. So secondly, you get halos around sharp edges sometimes if you over-process, if you work on it and work on it and work on it, all of a sudden you get a little halo. You can go ahead, maybe submit the image, but before you do that, go in there and take your brush and get rid of the halos. You may be able to restore it, but sometimes if you have halos, you've gone too far with the image in the first place. Mike, your thoughts on that? Okay.
One thing, since you're talking about tool marks, one thing I usually do is add a layer mask and crank up your brightness, crank up your contrast, and kind of go through that gamut of highs and lows, and you'll see all your tool marks.
That's a good point. Yeah. All of those tools are at hand for you when you use this. Now, out of focus eyes. Some of us are not doing, and I count myself in this category. We're not doing portraits as much as other folks. Fred does a lot. For example, Mike does, John does. And I'm not always looking at the eyes. There are people in the picture, but oftentimes the photographer who's judging is going to be having done a lot of portrait photography, and they're going to go right to the eyes. The eyes are not focused the way they should, or with some of the better pieces of equipment nowadays, one eye is in focus and the other is not. And that can really just kill the quality of an image for you.
We have a comment from Scott Dine in the comments. The rule of 3 is not a rule that must be followed. It is really nothing more than a statement. 3 repetitive items are more interesting than 1 or 2. And Scott is one of our most one of our more amazing members. Been with us for a long time, and he's got that eye for sure.
Absolutely.
Always listen to Scott.
Okay. Now, noise is up here, and I remember about 10 years ago, the sensors on cameras were very different, and there was noise in some images because they were low light, and it kind of added to the drama of the picture, and it contributed to it, perhaps. But nowadays, noise means that you haven't attended to the picture to the extent you can. So be really careful about processing it with one tool after another. You can introduce additional noise into it. And there are so many good instruments nowadays, good pieces of software nowadays that will eliminate some of the noise. But if it's noisy in the first place, it might be too noisy and it may not be recoverable. So you really do need to attend to that. Mike?
Ron, what's the difference between noise and grain?
Well, Mike, why don't you answer that question?
Repeat the question for him.
What's the difference between noise and grain? John, you're looking like you're ready to give the answer on that.
I didn't want to give the answer. I was hoping other people would know. Grain being, the culmination of gelatin in, your old film photos. Remember how you would have the high ISO photo, the film, the indoor film, that high ISO created more grain. Well, we have the same thing in digital, which is it culminates in noise. Mm-hmm. And instead of having those little grains of gelatin and the silver between them, you have basically just regular pixels. And a lot of us use a program called Topaz Denoise, which works out really well. But make sure you look to make sure you don't have a lot of color noise or noise in general in your images. And you can do that by zooming in, but don't become a dirty pixel peeper.
Right. Well, and let's go to the next bullet, distracting objects that need to be removed. Well, kind of the rule of thumb is if you have a little splash of light over here, particularly if it's lighter than the main subject, it's probably going to draw my eye to go look at that and not at the central subject. And with many of the tools nowadays, you can simply get rid of the noise. Get rid of the spot that's distracting. But look over each image to see if there's some little splash of light, a ray of light or something that's brighter than what you want the viewer to attend to. If here's the portrait, here's the person right here. And I remember one of the greatest photographs I took of my father when back about 40 years ago. Had a flash picture, and the lines on his face was really good. The only thing I didn't pay attention to was there was an owl pot holder on the front of the refrigerator that was coming out of the top of his head. And I learned a little bit from that because everybody who looked at the picture saw the pot holder and not my father. So just for novices, that's something that you just need to pay attention to and make sure it contributes.
Stuff near the edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Edge control, somebody called it.
Yeah.
But those are particularly important because they distract the eye to the edge of the picture
Right.
and away from the subject, even more than a bright light.
Chip Bolchin had a phrase for that, if some of you remember, called walk the four corners of the photograph. Take your eyes all the way around the edge, all four sides of it, and see if there's something there that's creeping off the side or that's creeping into the picture that shouldn't be there. But I try to do that, and I think it's a good rule of thumb.
Rich, you brought up a good point. What did you call that? Patrolling the edges? Border patrol.
Yeah, cool.
Photographic workshop, and that was one of the things that I emphasized. Do border patrol on your picture. Go all around the edge
Yeah.
and make sure there's nothing there that's going to draw the eye away from the center of the picture towards the border.
All right.
It can be fairly subtle for that.
Okay. What do we have? I think are one or two slides. Okay, we talked about the rule of thirds and impact. Now, this is directly from the slideshow when we used it last year. It is about impact. And I remember so many contests we've had where the pictures are coming up and you hear this murmur whenever a picture comes up, and it jolts you. It just hits you, and you feel like that. And Fred alerted me to that phenomenon, and I always had that in mind when I look at a picture. If it comes up on my computer screen and it kind of shakes me for a second, I'm thinking like, now we've got some impact here. I really want to pay attention to this and take this image to the next level. So, does it make you say, wow? Okay, and this is the most important thing. You can ignore every bit of advice we have here. If you believe the picture stands the way it is, every judge who looked at it, if you think it says the story, tells the story that you want it to tell, then it's okay. Judges don't have to like it. Other people don't have to like it. It's your image. So, any questions otherwise? Fred?
Yes, it happens in novice a lot. What happens is they don't have enough pictures. And sometimes we'll go to a second place, third place, and that's it. And if there's not enough of them, they don't have a contest.
Right.
Could you say something about that? They can also move to the other one. Can you repeat that?
Okay, the question had to do with what happens if we don't have enough images to have a regular contest. And we have, first of all, Mike has all these rules in his head, so I would, if he comes back in, get him to kind of go through what that is. But the most important thing is the feedback you get on the images. So where we can, we may not have a contest, but we would give the judge an opportunity to give feedback on these
I,
images.
I believe the rule is, and I don't have them with me, I believe we have to have 9 images for a contest. If we do not, then we can have a mini contest. And then I believe if we're under like 5, then we can vote to put them into, we can move those novices up to unlimited. We can put them together.
Yeah. So, Fred?
Okay, Fred says if the person,
You only have 4 images.
yeah, Fred says if the person votes to have it sent to the other level that they can. But we'll see if Mike has that stuck in his brain
Okay,
somewhere.
See, this is a
What's the question?
puzzle. If you don't have enough images for a contest, if we're down to 4 or 5, what do we do?
So if you don't have enough images, we have rules to have a mini contest, and I'd have to look up the exact rules to see how many images are required for that. But typically, we need at least 3 photographers, 9 images for a full contest. So it's probably something like 5 and 2 photographers or something. I have to look up what the actual rules are. It's on the website in our rules section.
So take advantage of the print contest. Beat everybody else here. You might have 9 one month on the first month. Not really sure. Rack up them points. I have another comment from Scott. It says noise usually results from over-processing, which is definitely true. As to leading lines, most judges simply say nice leading lines and neglect to point out the lines. When this happens, I figure the judge is not looking at the entire picture, only taking into consideration photographic cliches.
Now, I will tell you that in speaking of the judges, we're trying to get some really good judges this year. I've gotten good feedback on many of the contests from last year, and we're going to try to get some really good people in. Prints, people aren't used to coming out to in-person meetings and doing prints, so we're going to work very hard to be able to have judges here for all the print meetings coming up, as well as the, of course, the digital onlines. So just alert you that we're going to really be working on that. Ed?
Yes, how do we determine whether we're unlimited or novice with the prints? I forgot. Does somebody keep track of that?
Okay, Ed's asking how do you know if you're a unlimited or a novice?
With the color prints and the black.
With the color prints and black and whites. Okay.
We would have to ask Russ, the database keeper.
Okay. We have database, so it's good to ask that ahead. Good to ask that now before we have the contest at the end of the month. So, if anybody has questions,
I did that on digital, like 2 points short, because
Right.
we started a new year, and I made the other 2, and I just
okay.
said, heck with it.
So just send us an email, and we'll work with Russ and get an answer for it. It's been a while, so I'm sure you're not the only one with that question. John,
We're not done. Let's see.
I think we're getting close.
Thank you, Ron and Mike. Give them a round of applause for answering it, getting our brains back on track. I learned a lot of things about the stream tonight. First of all, this thing is noisy as heck, so I apologize to the internet people, even though I'm doing it anyway. We're going to fix that up. We need to do better at repeating questions, and that's something we're going to get better at as we go forward. The AI cam sucks, so I apologize if it was kind of going everywhere. I've got a fix for that. We had a couple dropouts on Facebook. I want to say that anybody watching live, if we do drop out, stick with us, but we will also put these up on YouTube like we have before. And did everybody hear our speakers here at the podium? Were they loud enough? Okay, so I don't need to bring a powered speaker, you don't think? We'll get a shot collar for Ron. We can make him speak louder and make sure he's over by the microphone as well. That's the only problem. Maybe I'll check out the microphone on the OBSBot and it may be better. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely a process. Thank you everybody for joining us online. Thank you everybody for joining us in person. And with that, that's it. Good night.